One wrong answer on the NASCLA contractor licensing exam can delay your contractor license. One mistake in your real construction business can cost you thousands of dollars in lawsuits, contract disputes, tax penalties, or even your license to operate. Most people spend weeks memorizing facts, yet fail because they don't truly understand how the business and legal rules work together. In this video, you'll learn the concepts that matter most for both the exam and the real world. Be sure to check the description below, where you can download a free study guide packed with some of the most important exam questions and key concepts to help reinforce what you learned today. Now, let's begin with the foundation every successful contractor must understand. Welcome to Module 1 of the NASCLA Contractor Licensing Exam course. This section focuses on the essential business management and legal principles that every commercial contractor is expected to know. You'll discover how to choose the right business structure, understand legally binding contracts, manage employees correctly, reduce business risk, and stay compliant with important regulations. These aren't just exam topics, they're practical skills that protect your business, strengthen your reputation, and help you build a successful career in the construction industry. By the end of this module, you'll have a solid foundation that will make the rest of the course easier to understand and bring you one step closer to passing the NASCLA exam with confidence. The very first step in establishing your contracting business is understanding the licensing requirements set by the state. The NASCLA exam serves as a recognized standard for commercial builders across many participating states, but you must still apply for a specific license in your target state. Working without a proper license is a serious offense that can lead to massive fines, stop work orders, and even criminal charges. Furthermore, unlicensed contractors completely lose their legal right to sue an owner for unpaid work, which is a devastating financial risk. Always ensure your business is fully licensed, bonded, and insured before ever stepping foot on a job site. Once you understand licensing, you need to select a formal legal structure for your new company. The simplest and most common starting point is the sole proprietorship, which is a business owned and operated by one single individual. While a sole proprietorship is very easy and inexpensive to set up, it comes with a massive hidden danger regarding liability. In this structure, the owner and the business are legally considered the exact same entity. This means that if your construction company is sued for a mistake on the job, your personal assets like your house and bank accounts can be seized to pay the damages. Because of that personal risk, most serious contractors choose to form a limited liability company or a corporation. These business structures create a solid legal wall between your personal bank account and your construction company. If an LLC or corporation gets sued, the legal action is directed at the business entity itself, safely protecting your personal home and family savings. Setting up an LLC requires filing articles of organization with your state, which is a highly common exam topic. Although it costs more upfront than a sole proprietorship, this corporate veil of protection is absolutely essential in the high-risk world of commercial construction. Moving right along, let us talk about the lifeblood of any construction project, which is the contract. A contract is simply a legally binding agreement between two or more parties, usually the property owner and the general contractor. For a contract to be legally valid, it must contain an offer, an acceptance, and consideration, which usually means the exchange of money for building services. If any of these fundamental elements are missing, the contract might be thrown out in a court of law. On the exam, remember that oral contracts are extremely difficult to enforce, so every agreement you make must be written down clearly. There are several specific types of construction contracts you will encounter on the exam and in the real world. The most traditional and widely used is the lump sum contract, sometimes called the stipulated sum contract. In a lump sum agreement, the contractor agrees to complete the entire project for one single, fixed price, no matter how much it ultimately costs them to build. This puts the highest amount of financial risk on the contractor, because if materials suddenly get more expensive, your profit margin immediately shrinks. However, if you manage the project highly efficiently, a lump sum contract allows you to keep all the extra savings as profit. Another major contract type you must know is the cost-plus contract. In this arrangement, the property owner agrees to pay the contractor for all actual construction costs, plus a specific agreed-upon fee for overhead and profit. This type of contract completely shifts the financial risk away from the contractor and onto the property owner. Cost-plus contracts are often used when the project design is not completely finished, making it impossible to calculate a precise lump sum bid up front. The downside is that you must keep incredibly detailed accounting records, because the owner has the right to audit every single receipt and invoice. No matter what type of contract you use, construction projects almost never go exactly according to the original plan. When the scope of work needs to change, you must use a formal document called a change order. A change order is a written amendment to the original contract that modifies the budget, the schedule, or the actual work being performed. One of the most common mistakes new contractors make is doing extra work based on a simple verbal promise from the owner. You should never start any extra work until a written change order has been officially signed by all required parties. Once the work begins, you need to understand how cash flows through a construction business. Commercial projects are expensive, so contractors do not wait until the very end of the job to get paid. Instead, they use a system called progress payments, where the owner pays the contractor in monthly installments based on how much work has been completed. To request a progress payment, you will submit a formal application for payment, often called a pay-app, which breaks down the completed work into specific dollar amounts. Getting these applications submitted accurately and on time is crucial for keeping your company funded and paying your subcontractors. When dealing with progress payments, you will frequently encounter a concept known as retainage. Retainage is a specific percentage of the payment, usually around 10%, that the owner holds back until the entire project is successfully completed. This withheld money serves as a powerful financial incentive for the contractor to finish the final details of the building and fix any minor defects. While retainage protects the property owner, it can severely hurt a contractor's cash flow because that 10% often represents their entire profit margin for the job. You must plan your company finances very carefully to survive while waiting months for your final retainage check. If an owner completely refuses to pay for the work you have completed, the law provides a powerful tool called a mechanic's lien. A mechanic's lien is a legal claim placed directly against the property title itself, essentially making the property collateral for your unpaid invoices. When a property has an active lien on it, the owner usually cannot sell the building or secure new financing until they pay the contractor what they owe. Filing a lien involves strict legal deadlines that vary by state, so you must send your preliminary notices exactly on time. Understanding the timeline for lien rights is highly tested on the NASCLA exam because it is your ultimate protection against non-payment. In addition to liens, the commercial construction industry relies heavily on surety bonds to guarantee performance and protect investments. A surety bond is essentially a three-party agreement where a bonding company guarantees the project owner that the contractor will fulfill their obligations. The three key types of bonds you need to memorize are bid bonds, performance bonds, and payment bonds. A bid bond guarantees that if you win the project, you will actually sign the contract at the price you proposed. This stops contractors from submitting recklessly low bids and walking away when they realize their mathematical mistake. The performance bond goes a step further by guaranteeing that the contractor will complete the building according to the contract specifications. If the contractor goes bankrupt or simply abandons the job site, the bonding company will step in and pay to have another contractor finish the building. Finally, a payment bond guarantees that the general contractor will pay all of their subcontractors and material suppliers. This prevents unpaid workers from filing mechanic's liens against the property owner's building. Knowing the exact difference between these three specific bonds will definitely help you correctly answer several exam questions. Alongside bonds, maintaining the correct insurance policies is legally required to operate a construction business. The most important policy is general liability insurance, which protects your business if your work accidentally causes property damage or bodily injury to a third party. For example, if your crane drops a load of steel onto a parked car, your general liability policy will cover the expensive damages. However, it is crucial to remember that general liability insurance does not cover mistakes made to your own actual construction work. If you build a wall incorrectly and have to tear it down, you must pay for that mistake out of your own pocket. Another legally mandated insurance coverage is workers' compensation insurance. Construction is a physically dangerous industry, and accidents will unfortunately happen on your job sites. Workers' compensation pays for the medical bills and lost wages of any employee who is injured while performing their construction duties. This insurance is usually required by law as soon as you hire your very first employee, and failing to carry it can result in immediate closure of your business. Furthermore, this system protects the employer, because an injured worker who accepts workers' compensation generally cannot sue the company for additional damages. Moving into employment law, you must thoroughly understand the strict legal difference between an actual employee and an independent contractor. An employee is someone whose daily work, schedule, and tools are directly controlled by your company, which means you must withhold taxes and provide benefits. An independent contractor is a separate business owner who controls how they perform the work, uses their own tools, and pays their own unique taxes. The IRS heavily audits construction companies that illegally misclassify regular employees as independent contractors to save money on payroll taxes. Misclassification is a major violation that can ruin a company financially, so always classify your workforce properly. You also need to be familiar with the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is the federal law governing minimum wage and overtime pay. This law requires that covered employees receive at least time and a half for all hours worked over 40 hours in a single workweek. Construction schedules are notorious for requiring long hours and weekend work, so tracking these hours accurately is a mandatory administrative duty. Failure to pay proper overtime is a form of wage theft that will trigger massive federal penalties and costly employee lawsuits. Accurate timekeeping is not just good business practice, it is a strict federal requirement. When hiring new team members, you are legally obligated to verify that they are authorized to work in the United States. This is accomplished using the Federal Employment Eligibility Verification Form, which must be completed within the first 3 days of a new employee starting their job. You must personally review their identification documents, such as a passport or a driver's license, and keep these forms securely on file. Government agencies conduct random audits of these records, and missing forms will result in heavy administrative fines per violation. Keeping organized human resources files is just as important as keeping organized blueprints. As a general contractor, your job is not just hammering nails and pouring concrete, it is actively managing legal risk every single day. By understanding how to structure your business legally, write bulletproof contracts, enforce your payment rights, and follow complex labor laws, you build a fortress around your company. The state licensing board wants to ensure that you are a responsible business owner before they ever let you build a commercial structure. Mastering these business and legal principles is the very first step toward passing the NASCLA exam and thriving in the competitive construction industry. Congratulations on completing the first section of this certification course. Now that we have covered business management and law, I strongly encourage you to complete the attached practice test. Answering practice questions is the absolute best way to improve your memory retention and measure your true exam readiness. This vital practice test is included right here with this lesson, so take advantage of it to reinforce what you just learned. Active learning is the key to passing your exam, and I look forward to seeing you in the next section where we will tackle bidding, estimating, and financial management. Welcome back to the course. In this second section, we are going to dive deep into the critical skills of bidding, estimating, and financial management. You will learn exactly how to interpret construction documents, calculate accurate material costs, and manage your company's accounting cycle. This topic is absolutely vital because winning projects means nothing if those projects do not actually generate a profit for your business. Get ready to master the financial side of construction, because understanding these numbers is the true secret to building a highly successful and lucrative contracting company. The financial journey of every commercial project begins with the bidding process. Bidding is essentially a formal competition where multiple general contractors submit their proposed price to complete a specific building project. The property owner reviews these competing bids and typically selects the contractor who offers the lowest responsible price. To succeed in this competitive environment, you must develop a systematic and highly accurate method for calculating your estimated costs. Guessing or rushing through a bid is the fastest way to lose money before the construction even starts. Before you can estimate a project, you must thoroughly review the construction documents provided by the architect. These documents consist of two main parts, which are the blueprints and the project specifications. The blueprints show the physical dimensions and visual layout of the building, while the specifications act as a detailed instruction manual for the materials and quality standards required. You must study both sets of documents carefully, because the specifications often contain hidden requirements that dramatically affect the final cost of the project. Once you understand the building plans, the next step is performing a quantity takeoff. A takeoff is the systematic process of measuring and counting every single piece of material required to complete the project. You will use the blueprints to calculate linear feet of framing, square feet of drywall, and cubic yards of concrete. Being highly organized during the takeoff phase is absolutely essential, because missing a single page of the blueprints can cause you to underbid the job by thousands of dollars. As you build your estimate, you need to understand the difference between direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are expenses that are physically tied to one specific project, such as the actual lumber, concrete, and wages paid to the carpenters swinging hammers. Indirect costs, often called project overhead, are the expenses required to run the job site as a whole, such as renting a temporary field office or hiring a project manager. On the exam, you must remember that both direct and indirect costs must be calculated before you ever add your profit margin. Beyond project overhead, you must also account for your general company overhead. Company overhead includes all the basic expenses required to keep your business open, even if you do not have any active construction projects. This includes your main office rent, administrative staff salaries, legal fees, and basic marketing expenses. One of the most common mistakes new contractors make is forgetting to include a percentage of their company overhead into every single bid. If your bids do not cover your office expenses, your company will slowly run out of money. After you have calculated all of your materials, labor, and overhead, it is finally time to add your profit. Profit is the financial reward you earn for taking on the immense risk of a commercial construction project. Deciding on the correct profit margin is a delicate balancing act that requires extensive industry experience. If you add too much profit, your bid will be too high and you will lose the job to a competitor. If you add too little profit, you might win the bid but end up working for free. A general contractor does not do all the work themselves, so your estimate will rely heavily on quotes from specialized subcontractors. Plumbers, electricians, and roofers will review the blueprints and send you their own estimated prices to include in your final bid. It is crucial that you carefully review every subcontractor quote to ensure they have included all the work required by the specifications. If a subcontractor misses a key detail and refuses to do the work later, you will have to pay the difference out of your own pocket. Because construction is highly unpredictable, a professional estimate should always include a contingency fund. A contingency is a specific amount of money set aside to cover unexpected problems that arise during the building process. For example, you might discover hidden water damage when tearing down an old wall, or a sudden storm might destroy your fresh concrete. Having a dedicated contingency fund protects your profit margin from these completely unavoidable surprises. The exam will test your knowledge of how to properly calculate and apply these emergency funds. When your estimate is completely finished, you will compile the final numbers into a formal bid document. This document must clearly state your total proposed price, the estimated time required to complete the work, and any specific conditions or exclusions. An exclusion is a clear statement of work that you are intentionally not including in your price, such as removing hazardous asbestos. Clearly communicating these exclusions prevents costly arguments with the property owner later in the project. Shifting from estimating to general financial management, you must understand the two primary methods of accounting. The cash method records income only when the money actually hits your bank account, and records expenses only when you actually pay a bill. The accrual method is much more common in commercial construction, recording income as soon as you send an invoice, even if the owner has not paid it yet. The NASCLA exam focuses heavily on the accrual method because it provides a much more accurate picture of a large company's true financial health. To monitor that financial health, contractors rely on key financial statements, starting with the balance sheet. A balance sheet provides a snapshot of your company's financial position at one specific moment in time. It is divided into three main categories, which are your assets, your liabilities, and your owner equity. Assets are things your company owns, liabilities are debts your company owes, and equity is the actual net worth of the business. Understanding how to read a balance sheet is crucial for securing bank loans and surety bonds. The second major financial document you must master is the income statement, which is also called a profit and loss statement. Unlike the balance sheet, the income statement tracks your financial performance over a specific period of time, such as a month or a full year. It shows exactly how much money came into the business as revenue, and subtracts all of your operating expenses to reveal your net profit. Reviewing your income statement regularly allows you to see if your estimating strategy is actually making money. Even if your income statement shows a massive profit, your company can still fail due to poor cash flow management. Cash flow is the actual physical movement of money in and out of your daily bank account. Because owners hold back retainage and often pay invoices late, contractors frequently experience dangerous cash shortages while building large projects. You must aggressively manage your cash flow to ensure you always have enough liquid money to make payroll every single Friday. To keep your finances perfectly organized, you must use a specialized accounting system known as job costing. Job costing tracks every single penny of income and expense and assigns it to one specific construction project. Instead of just looking at your total company spending, job costing allows you to see exactly how much money you made or lost on the new library project versus the office building project. This detailed data is incredibly valuable because it helps you adjust your future estimates and become more accurate over time. Another highly tested financial concept is working capital, which is a measure of your company's short-term financial strength. You calculate working capital by taking your current assets, like cash in the bank, and subtracting your current liabilities, like bills due this month. Bonding companies will closely examine your working capital to determine the maximum size of a project you can safely handle. If your working capital is too low, you simply will not be able to bid on large, lucrative commercial contracts. When managing your company assets, you must understand the accounting principle of depreciation. Construction equipment like excavators and bulldozers are very expensive, but they lose their value slowly over many years of hard use. Instead of expensing the entire cost of a bulldozer in one single year, depreciation allows you to spread that massive tax deduction over the useful life of the machine. Knowing how to calculate straight-line depreciation is a common mathematical requirement on the certification exam. Managing your accounts payable effectively is another easy way to increase your overall profitability. Material suppliers will often offer you a small trade discount, such as 2% off the total bill, if you pay their invoice within 10 days instead of 30 days. Taking advantage of these early payment discounts sounds like a small detail, but it can add thousands of dollars to your bottom line over the course of a year. You should always negotiate the best possible payment terms with your building material vendors. Finally, successful contractors use financial ratios to quickly analyze the health of their business. For example, the current ratio divides your current assets by your current liabilities to test your ability to pay your short-term debts. Another important metric is the debt-to-equity ratio, which shows how much of your company is financed by bank loans versus your own money. The state licensing board wants to see that you understand these basic ratios so you do not bankrupt your company and abandon half-finished projects. Congratulations on completing the second section of our certification course. Now that you understand the complex worlds of bidding, estimating, and financial management, I highly encourage you to complete the attached practice test. Practicing these specific accounting concepts and estimating scenarios will drastically improve your memory retention and overall exam readiness. This valuable practice test is included with today's lesson, so please dive right in to lock down this critical knowledge. Active learning is the proven path to success, and I will see you in the next section where we explore project planning and contract management. Welcome back to the course. In this third section, we are going to focus entirely on project planning and contract management. Building a commercial structure requires coordinating hundreds of workers, materials, and schedules, and without a solid plan, the entire project can quickly fall apart. You will learn how to create effective construction schedules, manage critical project documents, and resolve inevitable disputes before they delay the job. Get ready to learn the core management skills that separate average builders from elite commercial contractors. The project management phase officially begins as soon as the owner accepts your bid and signs the final contract. Your very first administrative task is pulling the necessary building permits from the local government municipality. A building permit is a legal document granting you official permission to construct the building according to the approved blueprints. Starting any construction work before the permit is officially issued is a massive mistake that will result in the city shutting down your job site immediately. Once the permits are secured, you must organize a pre-construction meeting before any equipment arrives on the site. This mandatory meeting brings together the property owner, the architect, the general contractor, and all the major subcontractors to discuss the project expectations. During this meeting, you will establish communication protocols, review site access rules, and clarify the overall project timeline. Taking the time to get everyone on the exact same page drastically reduces confusion and costly mistakes once the heavy machinery starts moving. With the team aligned, your next major responsibility is creating the master construction schedule. The schedule is a vital management tool that dictates exactly when every single task on the job site must begin and end. The most common format used in commercial construction is the Gantt chart, which is a horizontal bar chart that visually displays the start dates and durations of overlapping activities. A well-designed schedule ensures that the plumbers do not show up to install pipes before the carpenters have actually built the walls. As you build your schedule, you must master a concept known as the critical path method. The critical path is the specific sequence of construction activities that takes the longest total amount of time to complete. If any single task on the critical path is delayed by even 1 day, the completion date of the entire project is delayed by 1 day. Managing the critical path requires your constant daily attention, because keeping those specific tasks on schedule is the only way to finish the building on time. Another key scheduling concept you will encounter on the exam is float, which is sometimes called slack time. Float is the amount of extra time a specific task can be delayed without actually delaying the final project completion date. For example, landscaping the front yard might have 2 weeks of float, meaning the landscapers can start late without pushing back the final building inspection. Understanding where you have float allows you to shift workers around the job site efficiently when unexpected problems arise. Once the schedule is running, you must establish a system for handling project submittals. Submittals are highly detailed documents, material samples, and product data sheets that the contractor must submit to the architect for formal approval. The architect reviews these submittals to verify that the specific materials you plan to buy actually meet the strict design specifications. Ordering expensive custom materials before the architect has officially approved the submittals is a very dangerous financial risk that you must avoid. A very specific and highly tested type of submittal is the shop drawing. Unlike the main architectural blueprints, shop drawings are highly detailed diagrams created directly by the specialized subcontractors or material manufacturers. For example, the company fabricating the structural steel will create shop drawings showing exactly where every single bolt hole must be drilled. These drawings must be approved by the main structural engineer to ensure the steel framework will be manufactured perfectly before it arrives on the job site. Even with perfect blueprints and shop drawings, confusing situations will always happen in the field. When your workers encounter a problem or a contradiction in the building plans, you must submit a request for information to the architect. Also known as an RFI, this is a formal written document asking the design team to clarify exactly how they want you to build a specific detail. You must never simply guess how to build something, because if you guess wrong, you will be forced to tear it down and rebuild it at your own expense. Managing your specialized subcontractors is arguably the most difficult part of project management. A commercial general contractor rarely does the physical labor themselves, so your success entirely depends on the performance of your subcontractors. You must write clear and detailed subcontract agreements that clearly define their scope of work, their safety responsibilities, and their exact payment schedule. Failing to manage your subcontractors aggressively will inevitably lead to schedule delays, poor quality control, and massive budget overruns. To keep everything moving smoothly, the project manager must host weekly subcontractor coordination meetings. These meetings allow all the different trade foremen to discuss their upcoming work and coordinate their activities in shared spaces. For instance, The electrician and the HVAC installer need to communicate so they do not try to hang wires and ductwork in the exact same ceiling space on the exact same day. Excellent communication during these weekly meetings is the absolute best way to prevent frustrating physical conflicts on the job site. As the general contractor, you are legally responsible for all quality control on the job site. You cannot simply trust that the subcontractors are doing good work. You must actively inspect their progress every single day. If you notice work that does not meet the strict architectural specifications, you must immediately issue a non-conformance report and force the subcontractor to fix the mistake. Catching minor errors early prevents them from turning into massive structural failures later in the project. Throughout the entire project, you must maintain a highly detailed daily logbook. The daily log is an official legal record documenting the weather conditions, the number of workers on site, the specific activities performed, and any material deliveries received. If a massive dispute ends up in court 5 years later, your daily log will be your primary legal defense to prove exactly what happened on any given day. On the exam, you should always assume that accurate daily record keeping is a mandatory project management duty. Despite your best efforts, disagreements between the contractor and the owner will happen, leading to formal contract disputes. The NASCLA exam requires you to know the standard methods for dispute resolution, starting with mediation. Mediation involves bringing in a neutral third party to help the owner and contractor negotiate a fair compromise. Mediation is completely non-binding, meaning the mediator cannot force either side to accept an agreement, but it is often the fastest and cheapest way to resolve a construction argument. If mediation completely fails, the next step in the dispute resolution process is usually arbitration. Arbitration is a much more formal process where an expert arbitrator listens to both sides and then makes a final, legally binding decision. Unlike a massive court trial, arbitration is kept private and moves much faster than the traditional legal system. Most standard commercial construction contracts actually contain a mandatory arbitration clause, meaning you waive your right to sue the owner in a public court of law. The most expensive and time-consuming method of resolving a dispute is traditional litigation, which means going to a formal court trial. Litigation can drag on for several years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney fees, which can quickly bankrupt a small construction company. Because of this extreme cost, project managers must do everything in their power to solve problems through clear communication and negotiation before lawyers ever get involved. Your goal should always be building buildings, not fighting legal battles. As the project progresses, you will need to manage the complex process of progress billing we discussed in the last section. To prove how much work is done, you will often use a document called a schedule of values. The schedule of values breaks the entire massive contract price down into smaller, measurable line items, such as pouring the foundation or framing the walls. The architect will use this schedule to verify that you have actually completed the specific work you are asking to be paid for this month. Throughout the building process, local municipal building inspectors will visit the site to ensure you are following the municipal building codes. You are required to pass specific inspections at different phases of the project, such as the rough framing inspection and the rough electrical inspection. You must never cover up pipes or wires with drywall until the building inspector has officially passed the rough-in inspection. If you cover the walls too early, the inspector has the legal authority to force you to rip all the drywall back down. Excellent project management means always looking ahead and anticipating the next logical step in the construction process. You must order your long lead materials, like custom elevators and specialized electrical gear, several months before you actually need them on the job site. If your management strategy is simply reacting to emergencies as they happen, your project will always be behind schedule and over budget. Proactive planning, clear communication, and aggressive problem solving are the true hallmarks of a professional commercial contractor. Congratulations on completing the third section of our NASCLA exam prep course. Now that you understand the complex rules of project planning and contract management, it is time to test your knowledge with the attached practice test. Completing these practice questions is essential for solidifying these management concepts in your memory before exam day. The practice test is included right below this video lesson, so please take a few minutes to complete it now. Active practice builds true confidence, and I look forward to seeing you in the next section where we will tackle job site safety and environmental regulations. Welcome back to the course. In this fourth section, we are going to focus entirely on job site safety and environmental regulations. You will learn the critical rules established by OSHA, how to prevent the most common construction accidents, and how to safely handle hazardous environmental materials. This topic is absolutely vital because strict safety compliance is the only way to protect your workers from fatal accidents and protect your business from massive government fines. Get ready to master these regulations, because creating a safe job site is your most important legal and moral responsibility as a commercial contractor. The foundation of all construction safety in the United States is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, commonly known as OSHA. OSHA is a federal agency that creates and enforces strict safety standards to protect workers from physical harm. On the NASCLA exam, you must understand a foundational rule called the General Duty Clause. This clause legally requires every employer to provide a workplace that is completely free from recognized hazards that are causing or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm. To enforce these rules, OSHA conducts job site inspections that are almost always unannounced. When an OSHA compliance officer arrives at your construction site, you have the right to ask for their credentials and the reason for their visit. Inspections are prioritized based on specific triggers, starting with reports of imminent danger and fatal accidents. If a worker files a formal safety complaint against your company, that will also trigger a highly prioritized, unexpected inspection of your entire project site. During an inspection, the officer will closely examine your administrative safety records, particularly the OSHA 300 log. The OSHA 300 log is a mandatory legal document where you must record all work-related injuries and illnesses that require more than basic first aid. Beyond standard record keeping, the exam will test your knowledge of emergency reporting deadlines. You are legally required to report any workplace fatality to OSHA within 8 hours, and any inpatient hospitalization, amputation, or loss of an eye must be reported within 24 hours. Moving on to physical job site hazards, fall protection is heavily tested because falls are the leading cause of death in the construction industry. The general rule for commercial construction is that workers must be protected from falling whenever they are working at a height of 6 feet or more above a lower level. To comply with this 6-foot rule, you must provide physical guardrail systems, install safety nets, or require your workers to wear personal fall arrest systems. Ignoring fall protection requirements is the fastest way to receive a massive, willful violation fine from OSHA. When guardrails are impossible to install, workers must rely on a personal fall arrest system, which consists of an anchorage point, a lifeline, and a full body harness. The anchorage point is the secure location where the safety line attaches to the building structure, and it must be capable of supporting at least 5,000 pounds per attached worker. As a project manager, you must ensure that all fall arrest equipment is physically inspected for fraying or damage every single morning before a worker puts it on. Any defective safety equipment must be immediately removed from the job site and destroyed. Scaffolding represents another major fall hazard that requires strict supervision on your commercial projects. OSHA requires that all scaffolding be erected, moved, and dismantled only under the direct supervision of a designated competent person. A competent person is an individual who is capable of identifying existing hazards and has the official authority to stop work immediately to correct them. Furthermore, scaffolds must be built incredibly strong, designed to easily support their own weight plus at least 4 times the maximum intended load of workers and materials. Simple ladders cause thousands of construction injuries every year, so you must memorize the strict rules for ladder safety. When using an extension ladder to access an upper roof or landing, the side rails of the ladder must extend at least 3 feet above the actual landing surface. You must also follow the 4-to-1 ratio rule when setting up the ladder against a building. This means that for every 4 feet of vertical height, the base of the ladder must be placed exactly 1 foot away from the bottom of the wall to prevent the ladder from tipping backward. Moving from heights down into the ground, excavation and trenching operations are incredibly dangerous due to the risk of soil cave-ins. A cubic yard of soil can weigh as much as a small car, meaning a sudden trench collapse is almost always fatal for the workers trapped inside. OSHA requires that any trench measuring 5 feet or deeper must be protected by a formal cave-in protection system. The 3 primary methods of protection you must know for the exam are sloping the soil back, shoring the walls with timber or hydraulics, and shielding the workers with a heavy metal trench box. trench safety involves several other highly specific rules that frequently appear on the certification exam. You must keep all heavy equipment and excavated dirt piles, known as spoil piles, at least 2 feet away from the open edge of the trench to prevent soil from falling back in. Additionally, you must provide a safe way for workers to exit the trench quickly in an emergency. OSHA requires that ladders or steps be placed in the trench so that no worker ever has to travel more than 25 horizontal feet to reach a safe exit. Shifting to chemical hazards, you must thoroughly understand the Hazard Communication Standard, which is often called the Right to Know law. This regulation guarantees that every worker has the legal right to know exactly what dangerous chemicals they are being exposed to on the job site. To comply, you must maintain a binder containing a safety data sheet for every single chemical product present on your project, from paint thinner to concrete sealant. These data sheets explain the exact health risks of the chemical, the required protective gear, and the necessary first aid procedures in case of accidental exposure. Electrical safety is another critical area, as temporary construction wiring is notorious for causing deadly electrocutions. The most important rule to remember is that all temporary 120-volt electrical receptacles used by construction workers must be protected by ground fault circuit interrupters, commonly known as GFCIs. A GFCI is a highly sensitive device designed to instantly shut off the electrical current if it detects that electricity is leaking out of the intended path and into a person. Using extension cords without GFCI protection is a severe safety violation that building inspectors and OSHA officers actively look for. When your workers are servicing or repairing large mechanical equipment, you must implement strict lockout and tagu procedures. Lockout tagu is a safety protocol that completely disconnects a machine from its power source so it cannot accidentally turn on while someone is working inside of it. The worker servicing the machine must place their own physical padlock on the electrical breaker box, ensuring that nobody else can flip the power back on by mistake. Understanding this procedure is absolutely essential for protecting workers who are installing complex commercial building systems like large elevators and industrial air conditioners. Even with excellent safety planning, workers will always need personal protective equipment to guard against physical hazards. OSHA rules clearly state that the employer is legally responsible for paying for and providing basic protective gear, including hard hats, safety glasses, and hearing protection. You cannot legally force your workers to buy their own standard safety glasses out of their own pocket. Beyond just buying the equipment, the employer must properly train every single worker on exactly when the gear is required and how to wear it correctly. Along with protecting human lives, commercial contractors are strictly regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency to protect the natural environment. One of your biggest environmental responsibilities is controlling stormwater runoff during the early excavation phases of the project. When rain washes over an open job site, it carries massive amounts of loose sediment and chemical pollution directly into local rivers and city water systems. To prevent this, you are required to create a formal stormwater pollution prevention plan, utilizing physical barriers like silt fences to trap the muddy water before it leaves your property. When renovating or demolishing older commercial buildings, you will frequently encounter hazardous asbestos materials. Asbestos is a microscopic mineral fiber that was heavily used in old insulation and floor tiles, but inhaling the dust causes deadly lung diseases like mesothelioma. If you discover suspicious materials during a renovation, you must stop work immediately and hire a specialized laboratory to test the substance. General construction workers are never allowed to remove asbestos, as the removal process requires a highly trained abatement contractor using negative pressure containment rooms. Similar to asbestos, lead-based paint is a massive environmental hazard found in many older structures built before 1978. Sanding or grinding old lead paint releases toxic lead dust into the air, which causes severe neurological damage, especially to young children. The Environmental Protection Agency enforces strict rules for disturbing lead paint, requiring contractors to take formal certification classes on safe containment practices. During the exam, remember that you must use specialized plastic sheeting and heavy-duty vacuums to prevent lead dust from contaminating the surrounding neighborhood. Proper waste disposal is the final environmental concept you need to master for the NASCLA exam. A commercial construction project generates tons of debris, and you cannot simply dump everything into one single landfill. Hazardous materials, such as leftover paint thinner, chemical adhesives, and contaminated soil, must be strictly separated and sent to specialized hazardous waste processing facilities. Illegal dumping of hazardous construction waste is a severe federal crime that carries massive financial penalties and possible prison time for the project managers involved. Ultimately, achieving true job site safety goes far beyond simply memorizing government regulations and filling out administrative paperwork. The most successful commercial contractors actively build a strong safety culture where every single worker feels personally responsible for preventing accidents. You can foster this culture by hosting weekly toolbox talk meetings, encouraging workers to report near-miss accidents, and empowering anyone to stop the job if they see something dangerous. When safety becomes your company's core value, your workers go home to their families every night and your business remains highly profitable. Congratulations on completing the 4th section of this certification course. Now that we have covered job site safety and environmental regulations, I strongly encourage you to complete the attached practice test. Answering these specific safety questions will dramatically improve your memory retention and ensure your absolute exam readiness. This critical practice test is included right here with this lesson, so please take a moment to test your new knowledge. Active learning is the proven secret to passing your exam, and I look forward to seeing you in the next section where we will explore construction methods and materials. Welcome back to the course. In this 5th section, we are diving into the technical heart of the exam by exploring construction methods and materials. You are going to learn the industry standards for site preparation, concrete foundations, commercial masonry, and structural steel framing. Understanding these physical building processes is absolutely essential because a massive commercial structure is only as strong as the materials used to build it. Get ready to shift your focus from paperwork to the actual job site, because mastering these core construction methods will give you the confidence to manage complex structural projects from the ground up. The physical construction of any commercial building always begins with a phase called site clearing and grubbing. This process involves stripping away all the surface vegetation, trees, and the top layer of organic soil from the entire construction footprint. You must completely remove this organic material because buried roots and topsoil will eventually decay and rot over time. If you pour a heavy concrete foundation on top of decaying organic material, the ground will slowly sink, causing catastrophic structural cracks in your brand new building. Once the site is cleared, you must evaluate the underlying soil to determine its load-bearing capacity. Soils are generally divided into 2 main categories, which are cohesive soils like heavy clay and granular soils like sand and gravel. Granular soils are excellent for construction because they drain water quickly and are very easy to compact with heavy machinery. Cohesive clay soils are much more difficult to work with because they expand drastically when wet and shrink when dry, which can easily crack a weak foundation. To ensure the soil can support the building, the excavation contractor must perform mechanical soil compaction. Compaction uses heavy vibrating rollers to tightly squeeze the dirt particles together, forcing out the empty air pockets trapped underground. The structural engineer will require the soil to reach a specific density percentage before you are ever allowed to pour concrete on top of it. Testing companies will frequently visit your job site to verify that your dirt is compacted perfectly to the strict engineering specifications. With the dirt compacted, surveyors will arrive to establish the exact physical location and elevation of the building footprint. Surveyors use advanced laser instruments to set wooden stakes in the ground, marking the precise corners of the new foundation walls. This surveying step is incredibly important because if the building is accidentally positioned just a few inches over the legal property line, the city can force you to tear the entire structure down. You must personally double-check the surveyor markers before any concrete trucks arrive. Now we move to the foundation itself, starting with traditional shallow foundations. Shallow foundations are used when the strong, load-bearing dirt is located very close to the ground surface. The most common type of shallow foundation in commercial construction is the continuous strip footing, which is a wide strip of concrete poured directly under all the heavy exterior load-bearing walls. This wide footing takes the massive, concentrated weight of the heavy walls and safely spreads it out over a much larger area of dirt. If the surface soil is too weak to support a heavy commercial building, you must install a deep foundation system. Deep foundations completely bypass the weak surface dirt and transfer the weight of the building far underground to solid rock. A common deep foundation method involves driving massive steel or concrete piles deep into the earth using a massive hydraulic hammer. The exam frequently tests your knowledge of pile driving, because these deep foundation systems are incredibly expensive and require highly specialized subcontractors. Almost all foundations use concrete, so you must thoroughly understand the chemical properties of this universal building material. Concrete is a mixture of three basic ingredients, which are Portland cement, heavy aggregates like rock and sand, and clean water. When you mix the water with the cement powder, it triggers a powerful chemical reaction known as hydration. It is crucial to remember that concrete does not simply dry out like mud, it actually cures through this permanent chemical bonding process. The absolute most important factor in determining the final strength of your concrete is the water-to-cement ratio. Adding extra water to the mixture makes the wet concrete much easier to pour and smooth out on the job site. However, every single drop of extra water physically pushes the cement molecules further apart, which drastically weakens the final hardened structure. You must never let a lazy subcontractor add unapproved extra water to a concrete truck just to make their finishing job easier. While concrete is incredibly strong when compressed or squeezed together, it is surprisingly weak when stretched or pulled apart. To fix this dangerous weakness, contractors embed steel reinforcing bars, commonly known as rebar, directly into the wet concrete. The steel rebar absorbs all the stretching and pulling forces, known as tensile strength, while the hard concrete handles all the heavy crushing weight. Understanding how to properly space and tie this steel reinforcement is a highly tested code requirement on the certification exam. To ensure the concrete mixture is correct before pouring, quality control inspectors will perform a standardized slump test. The slump test involves filling a metal cone with wet concrete, pulling the cone away, and measuring exactly how many inches the wet pile slumps down. If the concrete slumps too much, it indicates that the mixture is dangerously watery and will be too weak to support the building. You must have the authority to completely reject any concrete truck that fails the slump test at the job site. After the concrete is poured and finished, it must undergo a strict curing process to reach its maximum structural strength. Proper curing involves keeping the fresh concrete consistently moist and at a moderate temperature for at least 28 days. If the sun quickly bakes the moisture out of the surface, the chemical hydration process will stop prematurely, resulting in a weak, crumbly foundation. Contractors use specialized chemical sprays, wet burlap sacks, or plastic sheets to trap the moisture inside the concrete while it slowly cures. Moving above the foundation, commercial buildings frequently utilize masonry blocks for their main exterior load-bearing walls. The most common material used is the concrete masonry unit, typically referred to as a cinder block. These blocks are manufactured in standard modular sizes, making it very easy for masons to build massive warehouse walls incredibly fast. Block walls are highly fire-resistant, structurally strong, and offer excellent soundproofing qualities, making them a staple in commercial construction. Masons stick these heavy blocks together using mortar, which comes in several different specialized strength categories. The exam requires you to know the difference between the primary mortar types, which are designated by the letters M, S, N, and O. Type M is the strongest mortar used for heavy underground foundations, while Type S is the standard choice for exterior load-bearing block walls. You must always ensure your masons are mixing the correct type of mortar specified by the structural architect. Just like a poured concrete wall, a block wall must be reinforced with steel to withstand heavy wind and earthquake forces. Masons install horizontal steel wire, called joint reinforcement, flat inside the mortar beds between the block layers. Additionally, they slide heavy vertical steel rebar straight down through the hollow open cores of the blocks. Once the vertical rebar is in place, a specialized liquid concrete mixture called grout is poured directly into the hollow cores to lock the steel and blocks together permanently. Controlling moisture is a massive challenge in masonry construction, because brick and block walls naturally absorb rainwater. To protect the interior of the building, masons install a waterproof membrane called flashing near the bottom of the wall to catch any trapped water. Right above the flashing, they leave small open gaps in the mortar called weep holes. These weep holes act as tiny drains, allowing the trapped rainwater to safely exit the wall cavity before it can cause mold inside the finished building. For high-rise commercial buildings, structural steel framing is the preferred method of construction. Structural steel offers the absolute highest strength-to-weight ratio of any building material, allowing you to build massive skyscrapers with wide-open interior floor plans. The most recognizable steel component is the wide flange beam, which looks like a giant letter I, and is used for heavy horizontal beams and vertical columns. Understanding how to safely sequence the erection of this heavy steel framework is a critical safety and management skill. Connecting these massive steel beams together requires extreme precision and strict quality control. The two primary methods for connecting structural steel are high-strength bolting and structural field welding. High-strength bolts must be tightened to a very specific torque requirement to create enough friction to hold the building together during a windstorm. Structural welding requires highly certified tradesmen, and the finished welds are often X-rayed by inspectors to ensure there are absolutely no hidden cracks inside the melted metal. Although structural steel will not catch on fire, it completely loses its structural strength when exposed to extreme heat. In a major commercial fire, unprotected steel beams will bend and collapse long before the actual fire is put out. To prevent a catastrophic building collapse, all structural steel must be coated with specialized fireproofing materials. Contractors typically use a spray-on fireproofing foam or specialized paint that thickens dramatically when heated, creating a protective thermal blanket around the vulnerable steel columns. Congratulations on successfully completing the 5th section of our licensing exam prep course. Now that you have a solid understanding of foundations, concrete, masonry, and steel, I strongly encourage you to take the attached practice test. Reviewing these technical construction methods through practice questions is the absolute best way to ensure maximum retention for exam day. This important practice test is included with today's lesson, so please take the time to test your knowledge right now. Active learning guarantees the best results, and I look forward to seeing you in our final section where we cover project finishes and closeout. Welcome to the final section of our course. In this lesson, we will cover the finishing construction trades and the highly important project closeout process. You will learn about basic mechanical systems, interior finishes, and the strict legal steps required to officially hand the building over to the owner. This phase is critical because mastering the closeout process is the only way to release your final retainage payment and actually realize your profit. Get ready to finish strong, because understanding these final steps will give you the confidence to successfully cross the finish line on any major commercial project. Once the heavy structural frame is erected, your next immediate goal is achieving what contractors call a dried-in building. Getting the building dried in means completely sealing the exterior roof, walls, and windows so that rain and weather can no longer get inside. Until the building is completely waterproof, you cannot safely install sensitive interior materials like drywall or electrical wires without risking massive water damage. Commercial buildings typically utilize flat roofing systems, requiring specialized membrane materials like heavy rubber to perfectly seal the top of the structure. With the water kept outside, you must next focus on controlling the interior temperature through proper insulation. Insulation materials are rated by their R value, which is a mathematical measurement of how well the material resists the transfer of heat. A higher R value means the insulation is much more effective at keeping the building warm in the winter and cool in the summer. The commercial energy codes are becoming incredibly strict, so you must ensure your insulation subcontractors are installing the exact thickness specified by the architectural plans. Moving inside the waterproof shell, the interior layout of the building is created using light-gauge metal stud framing. Unlike residential homes that use wood, commercial buildings primarily use thin steel studs because they are completely fireproof and will never warp or rot. These metal walls are typically non-load bearing, meaning they do not support the heavy weight of the roof. They simply divide the massive open space into smaller individual offices. Metal framing goes up incredibly fast, allowing your crews to define the interior hallways and rooms in a matter of days. To cover these metal studs, commercial contractors use heavy gypsum board, which is universally known as drywall. In commercial construction, you will frequently use a specialized product called Type 10 drywall, which is specifically manufactured to withstand extreme fire temperatures for extended periods of time. The building code requires this thick fire-rated drywall to be installed around stairwells and elevator shafts to protect people trying to escape a burning building. You must verify that the drywall installers are using the correct fire-rated boards in these highly critical life safety locations. As the interior walls are being built, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors will arrive to install the building systems. These three critical trades are collectively referred to as the MEP systems, and they represent the internal organs of your building. Coordinating the MEP trades is a massive management challenge because the plumbers, electricians, and heating technicians all need to fit their large pipes and wires inside the exact same narrow wall cavities. You must actively manage their schedules so they do not accidentally block each other from finishing their work. The plumbing system is installed in two completely different phases, starting with the pressurized water supply lines. The supply lines bring clean drinking water into the building using copper pipes or flexible plastic tubing. The second plumbing phase is the drain, waste, and vent system, which relies entirely on gravity to pull dirty water out of the building. The exam frequently tests your knowledge of drainage pipes, because horizontal drain pipes must be installed at a very specific downward slope to ensure the water flows away properly without clogging. Commercial electrical systems are much more complex and dangerous than standard residential wiring. In a commercial building, individual electrical wires cannot simply be run loosely inside the walls. They must be completely protected inside heavy metal pipes called conduits. The electrician must carefully bend these metal conduits and secure them to the steel framing before pulling the actual copper wires through them. You must schedule the electrical rough-in inspections carefully, because the building inspector will want to examine every single conduit before the drywall goes up. Managing the interior climate requires a massive commercial heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, commonly known as HVAC. Commercial buildings often use massive rooftop units, which are giant heavy boxes containing all the heating and cooling machinery in one single package. A crane carefully lifts these heavy units onto the roof, and then the HVAC technicians connect them to a maze of sheet metal ductwork hidden above the ceiling. This ductwork acts as the lungs of the building, pushing conditioned air into every single room and pulling stale air back out. To hide all of these ugly pipes, conduits, and air ducts, commercial buildings typically utilize suspended acoustical ceilings. These are the familiar drop ceilings consisting of a lightweight metal grid suspended from the upper floor by thin steel wires, filled with removable square acoustic tiles. Drop ceilings are incredibly popular because they allow maintenance workers to easily pop out a tile and fix a hidden plumbing leak at any time. The acoustic tiles also absorb echoing sounds, making large open office spaces much quieter and more comfortable for the workers. Once the ceiling grid is up, you enter the final phase of interior finishes, which includes paint, flooring, and commercial hardware. Commercial flooring often involves heavy-duty materials like poured epoxy resins or durable carpet squares designed to survive thousands of people walking on them every day. You must also install specialized commercial door hardware, including panic bars that allow large crowds of people to instantly push a door open during an emergency evacuation. These finishing details are highly visible to the owner, so quality control must be absolutely perfect during this phase. A critical element of commercial finishing is ensuring absolute compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, known as the ADA. This federal civil rights law mandates that all commercial buildings be easily accessible to people in wheelchairs or with physical disabilities. The exam will heavily test your knowledge of ADA rules, such as the exact required width of a commercial hallway, the maximum slope of a wheelchair ramp, and the precise height of grab bars in the public restrooms. Failing an ADA inspection is a massive mistake that requires extremely expensive demolition to fix. As the final paint dries, the project officially enters the closeout phase, which many contractors consider the hardest part of the entire job. Project closeout is the slow, tedious process of fixing minor mistakes, passing final inspections, and handing the legal keys over to the owner. The workers who laid the massive concrete foundation have long moved on to other jobs, leaving your management team to hunt down the final finishing touches. Strong leadership is absolutely required during closeout to keep your subcontractors motivated to cross the finish line. The closeout process formally begins with the creation of the punch list. The punch list is a highly detailed document created when the architect and the owner walk through the almost finished building, hunting for minor defects and missing items. They will write down every single scuffed wall, missing light switch cover, and slightly crooked door frame they can find. As the general contractor, You must rapidly send your subcontractors back into the building to fix every single item on the punch list before you can ask for your final payment. Once the punch list is nearly complete, the architect will issue a formal certificate of substantial completion. This is a massive legal milestone indicating that the building is essentially finished and can now be safely used for its intended purpose, even if a few minor touch-ups remain. Achieving substantial completion legally stops the project schedule clock, meaning the owner can no longer penalize you for delays. It also shifts the insurance risk and utility bills away from your construction company and legally back onto the property owner. To legally open the building to the public, you must secure a certificate of occupancy from the local municipal building department. The city inspector will perform one final, comprehensive walkthrough to guarantee that every single safety code, fire alarm, and ADA requirement has been met perfectly. You absolutely cannot allow the property owner to move their furniture in or open their business without this official piece of paper. Operating a commercial building without a certificate of occupancy will result in massive fines and immediate forced closure by the fire marshal. Before the owner hands over the final check, you must provide them with a complete set of closeout documents. This includes all the operation and maintenance manuals for the complex mechanical equipment, similar to the owner's manual in your car. You must also provide the final as-built drawings, which are updated blueprints showing the exact final locations of all hidden plumbing pipes and electrical conduits. The owner's maintenance team will desperately need these documents years later when they have to repair a broken pipe hidden inside a wall. When the punch list is zeroed out, the certificate of occupancy is hanging on the wall, and the documents are delivered, you can finally submit your final application for payment. This is the magical moment where the owner releases the 10% retainage money they have been holding back since the project began. Before handing over that massive check, the owner will legally require you to sign a final lien waiver, proving that you have fully paid all of your subcontractors. Collecting this final retainage check is the ultimate financial goal of every commercial project. Even after you cash the final check and leave the job site, your legal responsibility is not quite over due to the warranty period. Most standard commercial contracts include a comprehensive 1-year contractor warranty covering any defective materials or poor workmanship. If the roof starts leaking or the air conditioner breaks 6 months after the building opens, you're legally obligated to return and fix the problem for free. Professional contractors view this warranty period not as a burden, but as a final opportunity to provide excellent customer service and win future bids. Congratulations on completing the final section of our certification course. Now that you understand the intricacies of finishing trades and project closeout, I strongly encourage you to complete the attached practice test. Taking practice questions is the single most effective way to lock this information into your brain and guarantee your exam readiness. This final practice test is included right below this lesson, so please take a few minutes to conquer it. Active learning has prepared you well, and I wish you the absolute best of luck as you naturally transition to the next steps of your professional contracting career.